Hey, I'm Kara with Crackerjack Goods, and I'm going to show you some basic embroidery techniques using my new Cryptid Cutie embroidery patterns. Let's do this. So to get started with embroidery, you don't need a ton of things. You can keep it simple, but there are a lot of options. So I'm gonna walk through some of my favorites, but as you get started with embroidery, you'll find your favorite things and things you can't live without and things that you're like, I'm good, I don't need that. So to get started with embroidery, one of the first things you need is an embroidery hoop. All different sizes, there's all different styles, kinds. This is like a rubber plastic one. This is kind of one of the basic ones you can find at any craft store. This happens to be my favorite because it's got a really nice piece of hardware on it, and the wood is really, really nice as well. Again, personal preference, just kind of find what you dig and use it. And I feel like the standard size for embroidery patterns or what you're working on are probably gonna be 4, 5, or 6 inch, but they make every size. I mean, there's big ones and then there's like even smaller ones. Today I'm going to be working with a 4-inch hoop and a 5-inch hoop for these specific patterns that I'm going to be showing you stitches on. Embroidery floss, there's a lot of it out there. What you will commonly find is the DMC brand at any craft store. It's got a black and gold label on it and it'll have a little color number. This is what you're gonna find at most craft stores. This is called a skein. A whole skein of it goes a long way because whenever we start dividing up thread, you'll see how much you're actually using for a project. It's a good investment if that helps you justify getting all the colors you want. There are variegated options. These are hand dyed by a local company. Those are really fun. Metallic can be kind of funky to work with. It is fun and sparkly, and I love using it on certain things. Cosmo Floss is another brand. This is the brand that I prefer to use in what's offered in my kits. It's very smooth. It doesn't tangle easily, if at all. So this has become my favorite to use. They have wonderful colors. I've got a whole array that I'll be using today. The next thing on your supply list for embroidery is going to be fabric. Today I'm using cotton printed fabric pieces for my designs, but you can embroider on so many different things. You can embroider on denim is one of my favorites, canvas, linen, you can do silk. It's tricky, but you can do it. My go-to is a high quality quilting cotton. It holds up really well. It's nice to stitch on. You can find it in every color imaginable. So fabric is important. Next, you're gonna need a good pair of little scissors. I prefer something that's got a micro tip on it because at some point you will have to cut some stitches out and these just make your life way easier. Needles, there are specific embroidery needles. These are some that I like to use, but growing up when I learned how to embroider, I just used whatever sewing needle fit my project that was from like my great grandma's stash of needles. So I never had a specific embroidery needle. The main thing whenever you're working on a project is if you're gonna be using a thicker amount of thread, like this is 6 strands of thread in here. If you're gonna be using just one of the threads, you pull it out of here, you're gonna wanna use a really thin needle because you're not gonna wanna make a really big hole whenever you're working on that. But if you're gonna use all 6 strands of it, you're gonna wanna use a thicker needle. So it's actually gonna go through the fabric and the thread's gonna stay in place. And I always keep a little, this is a really cute needle minder. A needle minder is just a magnetic, cutesy little magnet you can get. They're everywhere, there's a ton of them. This you can put on your hoop while you're working and it keeps your needle handy. You put it, once your fabric is in the hoop, you can put it on there and sandwich it on there and keep your needle close. I don't like to put it on my fabric like that because they're typically heavy and they can weigh your fabric down, but I always have one on my sewing table because I'm really bad about setting my needle down and not knowing where it is, so I try to hold myself accountable. And having a cute one helps. Something else I always keep around is a water-soluble fabric marker. This one is from Sewline. It's a water erasable styla marker. I love this because this one washes off really well, and if I'm working on a pattern that I traced, or sometimes even if they're printed like this, but I want to go rogue and I want to make my own addition to it, I can use this and then follow whatever lines I create, and it's just easier than trying to do it without some kind of guide. Seam ripper, never a bad idea. Some stitches are gonna have to come out. Okay, let's cure the future. There's a very important supply that I forgot to tell you about. This is Clover water-soluble tracing paper, and you can cut off the size piece that you need and use their little stylus to trace it. I will be showing you more about how to use this later on in the video. Back to it. So to get started, you're gonna take your hoop, you're going to loosen the screw on top until you can easily pull it out. And then this is where I really like to work on a flat surface because this is gonna help you keep your fabric nice and tight. So you're gonna sandwich the fabric in here. So I set the inner loop down. I'm using a 4-inch hoop for this pattern. This is my new Mothman pattern, and this sample fits in a 4-inch hoop, so that's what I'm working with. And then I'm gonna keep a little bit extra around because that's gonna help you finish the hoop later on. So you center it the best you can, and then you're gonna take that other loop or hoop, and then you're just gonna put it right on top. And then this is where I lift it up and I start tightening it, because as you do that, it might kind of bunch up a little bit, and you can pull it and keep it nice and tight because you want this flat like a drum, and you don't want it to be loose. You want to stay nice and sturdy while you're stitching, so you have to do it pretty tight. And then I don't like to keep too much excess if I'm working in a hoop like this. Not that I've done this a billion times or anything, but that fabric can go into the back and then you stitch through it and then you just have a jumbled mess on the back. So I like to trim that a little bit so I don't do that like I have a billion times before. So when you've got your pattern in there nice and snug, this little guy is gonna be mostly black, but he's gonna have bright red little eyes. So the next thing you're gonna get is your embroidery thread, and I like to choose a length that's like as long as my arm. I have pretty long arms, so it's a long piece. And then I snip it off right there and you're ready to go. So you've got 6 individual strands in here. For this pattern, since these are pre-printed lines on the fabric, they're a little thicker than I would normally like trace something. I'm going to use 3 strands. So I'm gonna separate those. I feel like this is the easiest way to do it, is if you start separating it up here and pull your finger all the way down, and then you've got your thread separated. Wet the end a little bit, make it easier to go in the needle. Get my needle, let's see if I can do it without a needle threader. First try. First try. So what you're doing whenever you have your embroidery floss on your 3 strands, you pull it down to the middle. So it's actually becoming 6 strands now because you're gonna use it together like that. And then I pull the needle to the bottom and I just do a quick little double knot at the top. And then I cut the tail off so there's not too much thread floating around the back of my hoop. And then you're ready to get started. So whenever you are starting to stitch on an embroidery hoop like this, you're always going to bring your needle up from the back. You can look if that helps on the back. I tend to keep my finger back here and it kind of helps guide. I can kind of see where there's pressure where my finger is, and I can kind of direct where my needle needs to come up through the hoop. So you can kind of start wherever you want, and then you're gonna bring it up, and then you're gonna start stitching from there. I'm going to show you how to do backstitch. So when you've brought your embroidery thread from the back of your hoop to the front, what you're going to do is you're gonna take a stitch along your line. And as far as stitch length, it kind of depends on what you're feeling. Some projects I do a shorter stitch length. One I do, this is kind of like the average. You wouldn't do like an inch long stitch. So you want to keep it pretty little. So for back stitch, what you're going to do is you're actually going to come up ahead. Try to keep your stitch length as consistent as you can. You're going to come up ahead of where that stitch was, and then you're going to go back into that hole where that other stitch ended. And then you just keep going. So you come up ahead, and then you go back, You can see your line forming. It's gonna be a nice thick black line. Come up ahead, go back, and that is all there is to it. All right, the next stitch I'm going to show you is the split stitch. This one is really great, especially for curves, but you can still use it for lines or anything you want. But curves like on this pattern or like cursive lettering on a project, split stitch is great for this because you can kind of control the movement of the stitches. And I'll show you what that means because that might sound a little weird. So to get started, you're gonna come up through the back of your hoop, and then you're gonna act like you're doing just like back stitch or running stitch. Put a stitch down, and then what you're going to do, and I keep my finger under the back to kind of help guide where the needle is so I don't have to keep flipping it over. You're gonna come up in the middle of that stitch and split it. You don't have to try to count the different threads that are in there or anything. Just split it in the middle as best you can. You're gonna come up, and then you're gonna go forward with another stitch. And then you are just gonna keep doing the same thing. Split and go. And then you'll see whenever you get up here to this curve, you can kind of put it into place to make sure it lands where you want it to. And then I'm gonna go to the very tip of where that curve is. Come up and split it. And when you go ahead, it's gonna kind of go off to the side a little bit just because you're changing direction. And so this is where I like to use my thumbnail and just kind of scoot that stitch where I want it, and then I can anchor it with my needle coming up through the fabric. And then I've got that next stitch going in the direction that I want. And then you're just gonna keep going, just like that. So switch over to my red thread. I'm doing the same threading technique like I did with the black thread, and we're just gonna keep on going. So we are now onto the satin stitch. This stitch is great for filling. So I want his little red eyeballs to be solid. It's good if you're doing like a block or like a bold lettering. You could fill it all in with satin stitch. It's linear, as you'll see, and it fills in really nice. I like it. So you're gonna come up on one side. We're doing this circle. So we're gonna fill in the circle. So you come up on one side, and then you just go across to the other side, pull it through, and then you are gonna keep going, and you're just gonna get as close as you can to that first line, and you're gonna go right next to it, do the same thing, and just follow the outer line on your pattern. So I'm gonna come up to the edge of his little pink eye that's on the fabric, and then go across, and then go up on the other side. I tend to start in the middle and then go out on either side. I think that's just because that's how I learned how to do it, but you could definitely start on one side and go one direction. And so you're just gonna keep going, fill it in, and then most of the time whenever you do satin stitch, you wanna border it with another stitch. So that's why in this pattern, I have it bordered with a little bitty back stitch. It just kind of makes it crisper, like it helps fill in the circle to make it keep the shape of a circle, because it can kind of get a little goofy if you don't do that sometimes. And so that's your satin stitch. Next stitch is running stitch, which is pretty much back stitch, but not in a line together. So it's just one stitch off by itself, but same idea. You're gonna come up on one end of your little line. These are for little Mothman's ears. And then you'll go back down at the end of your line. And that's it, that's a running stitch. Just a little single solo stitch. And if you wanna get really crazy with your running stitches, this hoop is all just running stitches in different colors. I just kind of went nuts with thread scraps. I used one piece of thread, so it's very, very thin, and just kind of went nuts. I like the abstract, linear vibe that the running stitch can bring to a project. So have fun with it. I'm going to show you my new favorite method for tracing. Like I mentioned, you can use the water-soluble marker, but I have got this, it's Clover brand water-soluble tracing paper. And I like this because all you do is peel off the top so it's blue, flip it over and put it down flat, blue side on the fabric. And then this is so easy to do. So I'm just gonna trace Nessie's little head. And this, I don't even remember what this is called, but you can use just something that doesn't have a pointed end. This has a little ball tip on it. And you're just gonna trace right over the paper directly on the line. And this is so nice, and it's water soluble, just like using the marker. So whenever you're done with all your stitching, just run it under water, lay it flat to dry, and you're good to go. Your marks are gone. All right, let's see. Not a bad time to be heavy-handed. It's a little light, but it's okay. We're gonna keep going. This is where, if you need to grab your marker real quick just to make sure you can see what you need. I'm mainly focused on my dots for this pattern for the next 2 stitches. So I've got my fabric in the hoop, and I'm going to show you how to do a French knot. French knot is actually one of my favorite stitches. I feel like you either love them or you hate them. I don't know anybody else that loves them besides me, but they're a really great stitch for detail. So if you want some texture, it's a good filler stitch. So even if you had like bold letters that were hollow, but you wanted to fill all that in, that looks really cool. And then little details like this, if you want just like a little dot, like an eyeball or something like that, it's perfect. So I'm using pink for this. It's just what I happen to have on my needle, but for the pattern, it's black. So you're going to pull your needle up from the back like you would starting any other embroidery stitch. And this is where I think it's really helpful to keep your hoop flat on a surface, like a table, countertop, whatever, because you're gonna need both of your hands. You're gonna be moving around a little bit. So you are gonna pull up your thread and then pull it towards you. And then I'm using my left hand to just hold the couple inches closest to the fabric tight. And then you're gonna go behind that with your needle, and then you're gonna wrap it around a couple times at least. It really just depends on how thick you want your knot. I usually do 2, 3 at the max wraps around the needle. And then what you're gonna do is pull slowly back so you don't lose your little thread on there. And then put your needle tip back in where it shows a little dot on your pattern. And then you're gonna slide that down so it's flush with the hoop. This is where you have to finagle it a little bit with your hands. Then I hold that off to the side and keep it nice and tight with my left hand, because you don't want that fabric to get knotted or bunched up. And then you pull your needle through slowly, and you have the perfect little knot. The next stitch for our Nessie pattern is going to be the Lazy Daisy. So this one is also based off of dots, but we're not doing a French knot. So the dots for the Lazy Daisy stitch just means your spacing. So you're gonna start where you want the sharp point to be, and then wherever you want there to be the little loop detail, that's where the other side will be. So you can decide. For this, I'm doing it to look kind of like scales on Nessie's back. So what you're gonna do is you're going to start at the pointed end of your Lazy Daisy stitch and come up through that bottom dot, pull it through. This is another one that you can keep flat on the table. It helps you maneuver. And then you are going to make a loop, and you're gonna go back through really close to where you came up through the fabric that first time. And you're gonna hold your loop that you made with this thumb so that you can pull it, because what you're gonna do is get it to where you want it and anchor it down. So when it starts getting close to the fabric, that's when I kind of place it. So the dot that I'm going to come up through from the pattern is in the center of that loop. It'll wiggle around it a bit. It's okay. You just use your needle. You're going to come up through there on the bottom of that little loop. And then you're going to just go right over it and just do a little anchor stitch right there. And there's your little lazy daisy stitch. And so you'll do that for each of those. You just keep going. So I'm going to show you some of the final processes of wrapping up your hoop. When you are done with your length of thread, or it's the last bit of your project, I like to, again, the table's your friend, flat surface is your friend, flip your hoop over, and on the back, this is, I feel like, the easiest, simplest way to make a knot. So you are going to just make a little loop, put your needle through it, and then you'll have that little loop and start pulling it. And then I just get it right up against the back of the fabric. And then you've got a knot right at the back. It's not loose, it's snug, it's exactly where you want it to be. And then you just snip those little thread ends. So now you are ready to back your hoop after you're done. So there are a couple ways you can do this. I think the simplest way is to use either hot glue or something like this tacky glue. I think the most important thing is you just don't want to have all of this loose fabric hanging around. So what you're going to do is you're going to have the back of your hoop up, and then I usually cut maybe ½ an inch, even less, like a ¼ inch or so. I'm not gonna do the whole thing. I'm just gonna kind of show you what I do a little bit. So I get some of that fabric out of the way, and then all I do is do a little bit, put a little bit of glue right on top of this inner hoop right here, and then just use my fingers and just fold it over. And I just go bit by bit, whether it's hot glue or with this, and you just kind of crimp it around the whole way. Once you have it all glued down, what you can do is go around with another bit of glue all around and just put like a plain piece of felt on there, and it just gives a nice finish, because you can use the little screw on top for the little nail hole, so you don't have to be worried about like covering it up. So here is my Sasquatch. So this is how the back of the hoop is going to look when you've done that method. So it's nice, it's tight, it's not going anywhere. It's a good way to finish it, and especially if you use hot glue, it dries so quick and then you're just like, boom, done with your hoop. Thank you so much for watching. I appreciate you checking out this video. I hope you really have a lot of fun embroidering, whether it's your first time or the 500th time. All of these downloadable PDF patterns are available on my website, crackerjackgoods.com. I've got Bigfoot, Mothman, and Nessie to get you started. You can find me on Instagram at crackerjackgoods, and I'm happy to help if you have any questions about the embroidery process or really any other fiber art. I love it all, and I hope it encourages you to get creative. Happy stitching.